The sun was falling low across the desert plains, burning the sky into a haze of gold and crimson. The land stretched wide and endless, where the wind carried the whispers of coyotes and the smell of dry earth. It was here that a cowboy named Luke Carson rode alone, his horse's hooves beating a steady rhythm against the ground. Luke was not a lawman nor an outlaw. He was a wanderer, a man who had seen too much violence in his younger years and now searched for something better, something that gave his days meaning. His father had died with a gun in his hand, and Luke swore he would never meet that same end. But the West was a hard place, and peace was not easy to find. On the far horizon, smoke curled from a small fire near a cluster of rocks. Luke slowed his horse, eyes sharp and cautious. In these lands, every meeting could turn friend or foe. Drawing closer, he saw a young woman sitting by the flames, her dark hair braided with beads, her dress woven with patterns of the Apache people. Her face was streaked with dirt, and though she sat strong and upright, there was a weariness in her eyes. The girl noticed him before he spoke. She rose to her feet, steady as a mountain, though her frame was slight. In her hand she held a short spear, not raised in attack, but firm enough to warn that she would not be taken lightly. Luke tipped his hat. "Evenin', miss. Didn't mean to startle you. Just passin' through." She studied him, her gaze neither fearful nor welcoming. "This is not your land, cowboy. Why do you ride here?" Luke dismounted slowly, showing no threat. "Lookin' for a trail south. That's all. Been ridin' long." The girl said nothing at first. The silence stretched, filled only by the crackle of fire and the distant cry of an eagle overhead. Then she spoke, voice low but steady. "The South Trail is not safe. Riders with guns patrol it. They take what they want. They took from my people." Luke saw the weight behind her words. He glanced at her fire, the small bundle beside it, and understood she was alone, not by choice. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then answered. "Ahyoka. It means she brought happiness." Luke nodded with respect. "I'm Luke Carson. Guess we're both strangers out here." That night they shared the fire. Luke spoke little, letting her words come when they wished. Slowly, Ahyoka told him of her village, attacked by raiders wearing no uniform, men who hunted both cattle and people. Her family was scattered, some taken, some killed. She had escaped, but the desert offered little kindness to one alone. Luke listened, the sorrow in her story heavy on his chest. He had seen cruelty before, but hearing it from her lips made it cut deeper. He realized then that fate had led him here, not by accident. Before sleep took them, Luke said softly, "No one should have to walk this land alone. Tomorrow I'll ride with you. We'll find your people, or what's left of them." Ahyoka studied him through the firelight, her dark eyes unreadable. Trust was not easily given, but something in Luke's voice carried no deceit. She gave the faintest nod, and that was enough. The desert night grew cold, and as the fire dimmed, two strangers sat close, bound not by blood or land, but by a quiet need for hope. Morning broke with the call of a hawk circling high above the desert. The fire had burned down to ashes, and Luke was already saddling his horse when Ahyoka stirred awake. Her spear still rested by her side, and though she had slept little, her spirit seemed steadier than the night before. Luke glanced at her with a small nod. "Day's gonna be long. You ready to ride?" She rose, gathering her small bundle of belongings. "I have been ready since the night they came." They set out together, the cowboy and the Apache girl, moving south across rugged canyons and dry riverbeds. The land was vast, the silence heavy, broken only by the creak of leather and the steady hoofbeats. For a long while they spoke little, but companionship itself was a balm. By midday they reached an abandoned homestead, its roof half caved in, the fences broken, and cattle long gone. Luke slowed, scanning the tracks in the dirt. He crouched low, pressing his fingers to the ground. "Riders passed here," he murmured. "Not more than a day ahead, 6, maybe 7 horses. Heavy loads. Ayoka dismounted, her eyes narrowing. These are the ones. They move the stolen, as if they are cattle. Luke's jaw tightened. He knew what she meant. To men without conscience, people could be sold just as easily as stolen horses. They followed the trail into the evening, until smoke from another camp rose in the distance. Luke held up a hand, signaling to stop. He pulled his rifle from the saddle and scanned the horizon. Shadows of men moved around the fire. Their laughter carried cruel and careless, the sound of wolves who thought no hunter stalked them. Luke spoke low. "Too many to take head on. Best we stay low and watch." Ayoka crouched beside him, her eyes fierce. "They took my brother. If he is there, I will not wait." Luke turned to her, his voice calm but firm. "Rush in now. You'll get killed, and your brother with you. Patience keeps you alive. Trust me." Her hands clenched tight around her spear, but after a moment she gave a sharp nod. Trust was still difficult, but Luke had earned a sliver of it. Through the night, they watched. The raiders were careless, leaving their prisoners tied near the wagons. Luke counted 3 captives. When the moon was high and most of the men had drunk themselves into sleep, Luke leaned close to Ayoka. "Now's our chance." They moved like shadows. Luke with his knife, Ayoka with her spear, step by step, silent as the wind. Luke cut the ropes binding the captives, whispering for them to stay quiet. Ayoka searched the faces desperately until she found him. A boy of barely 12, his eyes wide with shock and hope. Her brother. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back, pulling him close before helping him to his feet. One of the raiders stirred, muttering in his sleep. Luke froze, hand on his revolver. The man turned over and fell back into snores. The chance held. They slipped away into the night, the boy leaning against his sister. Luke led them to the cover of rocks before the camp stirred again. When they were safe, Ayoka finally allowed herself to weep, holding her brother close. "You are safe now," she whispered. "You are safe." The boy's voice was weak, but he managed. "I knew you would come." Luke stood guard, scanning the horizon. Relief warmed his chest, but danger still lingered. Those raiders would wake soon, and when they did, the hunt would begin. As dawn painted the sky pale blue, Luke saddled his horse and looked at Ayoka. "We bought time, but not much. They'll come hard after us. We need to keep moving, find shelter, find your people if they're still out there." Ayoka placed a hand on her brother's shoulder, then met Luke's eyes. For the first time, there was no doubt in her gaze. "We will ride with you, cowboy, wherever this trail leads." And so they set off again, the cowboy, the Apache girl, and her young brother, bound by danger, by hope, and by the fragile thread of trust that was beginning to grow into something stronger. The desert stretched wide, but for the first time, none of them felt truly alone. The trail wound through red canyons and dry arroyos, the morning sun casting long shadows that seemed to reach for them. Luke rode at the front, eyes sharp, ears tuned to every sound. Behind him, Ayoka kept close to her brother, who struggled to sit upright but refused to complain. The boy's spirit was stronger than his frail body. By midday, Luke spotted dust rising far behind. He cursed under his breath. "They're comin'. Raiders picked up our trail." Ayoka tightened her grip on the spear, fire in her eyes. "Let them come. We will fight." Luke shook his head. "Fighting a dozen men out here is suicide. We need ground in our favor, someplace narrow where numbers don't matter." They pressed on until the canyon walls rose high around them. The land narrowed into a twisting passage, rocks jagged like broken teeth. Luke slowed his horse. "This'll do. We can hold him here long enough to buy a chance." He led them to a shallow cave tucked into the cliffs. There, Ayoka and her brother hid while Luke prepared the ground. He rolled loose stones into piles, set vantage points for his rifle, and studied every curve of the canyon. His hands moved with calm precision. But inside he carried the heavy knowledge that one man with a gun could only hold out so long. The boy looked at him, fear flickering in his young eyes. "Will they find us?" Luke crouched down, meeting him eye to eye. "Listen here, kid. Men like them think they can take whatever they please. But folks who stand together, they got something stronger. They got each other, and that's something no outlaw can steal." The boy nodded, clutching his sister's hand tighter. By late afternoon, the raiders appeared at the mouth of the canyon, their laughter echoing cruelly off the stone. They dismounted, guns glinting in the sun, and began their slow approach. Their leader, a broad man with a scar across his jaw, called out, "Cowboy, hand over the girl and the boy, and we'll let you ride free. No need to die over what ain't yours." Luke stepped into view, rifle in hand, his voice steady as steel. "They're not yours either. You best turn around before you find out how quick you can meet your maker." The leader sneered, waving his men forward. "One man standing in a canyon don't scare me none." A shot rang out. Luke's rifle cracked, striking a raider's hat clean off his head, the bullet grazing close enough to singe hair. The man tumbled back in shock. The canyon walls magnified the sound, making it thunder like an army's volley. The raiders hesitated. Luke's eyes were calm, but his stance said he'd fight to the last breath. From the shadows, Ayoka's voice carried strong and fierce. "This land knows us, not you. Step closer, and it will bury you." Her words echoed with the power of her people, and even Luke felt the hairs on his neck rise. The raiders muttered among themselves. Fear was creeping in. The leader spat, angry but cautious. "This ain't over, cowboy. You can't guard 'em forever. We'll be back." With that, he ordered his men to retreat. The dust settled. Silence returned. Luke lowered his rifle, though his shoulders remained tense. He knew men like that. They didn't give up easy. They'd regroup, wait for another chance. Inside the cave, Ayoka's brother clung to her, whispering, "He saved us." Ayoka looked at Luke, her voice softer now. "You risked your life for us, though we are not your blood." "Why?" Luke gazed at the horizon, the weight of memory in his eyes. "Because I seen what happens when no one stands up. My pa died in violence, and I swore I'd live different. If a man's got strength to protect, then he's bound to use it, else he ain't no man at all." The words lingered in the still air. For the first time, Ahyoka's guard lowered completely. She touched her brother's hair gently, then looked back at Luke. "Then perhaps the spirits sent you to us. Not all cowboys bring sorrow." The night that followed was uneasy but filled with a quiet bond. Around the small fire in the cave, Luke shared tales of drifting towns and lessons learned, while Ahyoka spoke of her people's ways. The strength of the earth, the songs of the rivers, and the wisdom passed through generations. Luke listened with respect, realizing how much had been stolen from her, how much the world dismissed as savage, when in truth it held more grace than most towns he had ever known. In that canyon, 3 souls, a cowboy, an Apache girl, and her brother, found something rare in the hard West. A family formed not by birth, but by choice, and by the fire of trials survived together. Yet beyond the canyon, shadows stirred. The raiders were not gone, only waiting. And the path ahead promised harder choices, where survival would demand not just strength of arms, but strength of heart. The canyon gave them one night's safety, no more. By dawn, Luke could see fresh tracks on the ridge above. The raiders were circling, patient as wolves. "We can't hole up here forever," Luke said as he tightened the cinch on his horse. "They'll smoke us out, or box us in." Ayoka touched her brother's shoulder. The boy was weak but determined, refusing to be left behind. She looked to Luke. "There's a village 2 days' ride east. My mother's people. If they live still, they will give us shelter." Luke nodded. "Then east it is. But we'll have to move careful. They'll be watching." So they left the canyon, riding through narrow ravines and over dry mesas, always scanning the horizon. By midday, the desert sun blazed mercilessly and their canteens ran low. The boy stumbled, near collapse. Luke lifted him onto the horse without a word, walking on foot himself. "Why do you suffer for us?" Ayoka asked as she walked beside him. Luke shrugged, though his shoulders ached. "World's already got enough men who only look after themselves. I ain't looking to add to that count." They pressed on until the land changed, the desert giving way to scattered pines and cooler winds. Relief came briefly, but danger was never far. Late that evening, a rifle cracked in the distance. A bullet struck the rock near Luke's head, showering them with stone fragments. "Down!" Luke barked, pulling Ayoka and her brother into cover. The raiders had found them. Figures moved in the tree line, circling like predators. Luke returned fire, his rifle barking loud. Ayoka hurled a stone with deadly aim, striking one of the men who crept too close. Her courage was fierce, her eyes blazing like the sun on steel. But they were outnumbered. Luke knew it. He fired, ducked, and fired again, but the shadows kept pressing. Then, from the east, came a sound that split the air, the echo of war cries. A band of Apache warriors surged from the trees, bows and rifles raised. The raiders turned in shock, suddenly the hunted instead of the hunters. The clash was swift and brutal, the raiders scattering in retreat. When silence fell, Luke stood slowly, lowering his rifle. Ayoka stepped forward, calling out in her language. The Apache warriors recognized her and lowered their weapons. Among them was an elder woman who rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. Ayoka fell into her embrace. "Mother," she whispered. Luke turned his gaze away, giving them their moment. Relief flooded his chest, but he also knew what it meant. He was now a guest in a world not his own. That night, the Apache village welcomed their lost children home. Fires burned bright, drums echoed, and songs filled the air. Ayoka sat beside her brother and mother, her face glowing with joy. Luke remained at the edge, silent, content to watch. But not all eyes were kind. Some of the warriors looked at him with suspicion. To them, he was still a white cowboy, a stranger from a people who had brought sorrow and betrayal. One young warrior in particular, tall and sharp-eyed, glared at Luke with open distrust. Later, as the firelight dimmed, the elder men of the village spoke with Luke. Their voices were measured but firm. "You helped our daughter. For this, you have honor. But you bring danger. These raiders hunt you still. If you stay, they may return and bring death to our people." Luke lowered his head respectfully. "I never meant to bring harm. I'll ride out at dawn if that's what you wish." Before the elders could reply, Ayoka rose to her feet, her voice steady and strong. "No, he stays. Without him, my brother would be lost. Without him, I would be alone in the desert. He is not like those others. He carries no greed in his heart." Her words carried weight. The elders fell into silence, then nodded slowly. "Then let the spirits decide. He may stay one night more. At dawn, his path must be clear." Luke accepted without argument. He knew better than to press his welcome. Yet as he sat in the quiet edge of the village, he felt a stirring inside, a sense that perhaps he had found something worth more than all his wandering. But as the stars wheeled overhead, distant in the night, the raiders regrouped. Their leader's pride had been wounded, and men like him did not forgive. They gathered in greater number now, guns loaded, vengeance burning in their eyes. The storm had not passed. It was only waiting. Dawn rose in quiet beauty. The village stirred awake, smoke rising from fires, children's laughter weaving with the sound of birds. For a moment, it seemed peace had returned. But Luke knew better. He had seen the look in the raiders' eyes when they retreated. Men like that carried grudges sharper than knives. He walked to the edge of camp where Ayoka stood, her braid glinting in the morning sun. Her brother still slept near their mother. Luke adjusted his hat, his voice low. "This place won't stay safe. Those men will be back, and not just for you. They'll come for the whole village." Ayoka turned, her gaze steady. "Then we fight. Together." Luke studied her, then the village behind her. He saw warriors sharpening arrows, women gathering children close, young men eager but uncertain. The weight of choice pressed heavy on him. He could ride away and save himself, as the elders had offered. Or he could stay, stand beside these people who had every reason to mistrust him, and risk his life for a cause not his own. He let out a long breath. "If fightin' is comin', then I'll stand with you." The news spread quickly. Some welcomed it, others frowned. The young warrior who had glared at Luke before confronted him now, anger flashing in his eyes. "You are not Apache," he said sharply. "Why should we trust you with our lives?" Luke met his gaze, calm but unflinching. "You don't have to trust me, but when the bullets start flying, you'll know where I stand, right beside you." The warrior said nothing more, but his jaw tightened, and something like respect flickered in his eyes. By midday, the lookouts returned with grim news. Dust rising on the horizon. Dozens of riders. The raiders had returned, stronger than before. The village prepared. Warriors took to the high rocks, bows and rifles ready. Women and elders hid the children deep in the caves. Luke checked his revolver, then his rifle, his movement steady though his heart pounded. Ayoka approached, her spear in hand. She looked at him with quiet determination. "If we fall today, let it be with honor." Luke tipped his hat, a small smile touching his lips. "Ain't planning on falling, but if it comes to it, I reckon honor's the only way worth going." The ground shook as the raiders charged. Their leader roared at the front, his scarred jaw twisted in fury. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the canyon walls. Arrows whistled from the rocks, striking horses and men. Luke fired shot after shot, each one true, dropping raiders before they could reach the village. The battle raged fierce. Dust, smoke, and cries filled the air. The young warrior who had doubted Luke fought side by side with him, covering each other's blind spots. When Luke's rifle jammed, the warrior tossed him a bow without hesitation. A bond was forged in fire and blood. Ayoka moved like the wind, striking swift with her spear, defending her brother who carried stones to throw from the ridge. Even the boy, though frail, fought with the courage of a lion, refusing to hide. But the raiders kept pressing. Their numbers were great, their greed greater. At last, the scarred leader forced his way through, bearing down on Ayoka and her brother. His pistol raised, eyes burning with malice. Luke saw him too late. His rifle was empty, his revolver out of reach. He sprinted forward, heart hammering, but the shot had already been fired. The echo rang loud, but Ayoka still stood. Her brother still breathed. The scarred leader staggered, a look of shock on his face. Behind him, the young warrior lowered his smoking rifle. The leader fell, dust rising as his body hit the earth. The raiders, seeing their leader slain, broke in panic. Some fled, others dropped their weapons, scattering into the desert. The village stood victorious. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breaths of the living. Smoke drifted through the air, but the village still stood. Luke leaned on his rifle, weary but alive. The young warrior approached, meeting his eyes. "You fought as one of us," he said simply. "Today, you are Apache." The words carried weight, and Luke felt something stir deep inside. For the first time in years, he belonged somewhere. That evening, the village gathered. Songs rose to the stars, honoring the fallen and celebrating survival. Ayoka sat with her family, but her gaze often drifted to Luke, who stood at the fire's edge, quiet as ever. When the songs ended, she approached him. "You could leave now," she said softly. "The raiders are gone. Your debt is paid." Luke looked at her, then at the boy sleeping safely in his mother's arms, then at the people who had fought with him as brothers. His voice was low, steady. "I reckon I've been riding a long time looking for something worth staying for. Maybe I found it here." Ayoka's eyes softened, and for the first time, a true smile lit her face. "Then stay. Not as a cowboy, not as an outsider. Stay as a man who chose honor." Luke tipped his hat, a rare peace settling over him. "Reckon I will." And so the wanderer laid down his endless trail. In a land torn by greed and blood, a cowboy and an Apache girl found not only survival, but kinship. A family born of courage. And a home built not on land or race, but on the simple, unshakable truth that all people deserve to stand free. The desert wind carried their story into the night, a tale of loss and hope, of strangers made family, and of how even in the harshest places, honor could still light the way.